Today, Estée Lauder Companies controls over 25 luxury beauty brands worldwide, from MAC to Clinique to Tom Ford. Worth over $150 billion at its peak, it dominates the counters of every major department store on Earth. Millions of women wake up each morning and reach for products bearing the Lauder name. But what few people know is that it all started with a woman who was turned away from every major retailer in New York, a Hungarian chemist uncle mixing creams in a makeshift laboratory, and 4 simple products sold one customer at a time in beauty salons across Queens. This is the story of how Estée Lauder built a beauty empire on rejection, obsession, and a single revolutionary idea. Luxury cosmetics weren't just for the wealthy. They were for every woman who wanted to feel beautiful. Josephine Esther Menzer was born on July 1, 1908, in Corona, Queens, New York. The youngest of 9 children, she was the daughter of Hungarian Jewish immigrants. Her father, Max Menzer, ran a small hardware store beneath the family's apartment. Her mother, Rose, managed the household with the exhausting efficiency of a woman raising 9 children on a shopkeeper's income. The neighborhood was working class, crowded, and filled with the smells of immigrant cooking and industrial smoke. Estée would later describe her childhood home as modest, but filled with her mother's belief that appearance mattered, that cleanliness and presentation could lift a family above its circumstances. It was a lesson Estée would carry for the rest of her life. As a teenager, Estée showed no particular interest in business. She was vain, by her own later admission, obsessed with her appearance, and determined to be noticed. But the turning point came when her uncle, Dr. John Schatz, a chemist from Hungary, moved to New York and set up a small laboratory behind the family's home. Schatz had developed a line of skin creams, primitive by today's standards but revolutionary for the 1920s. He sold them to beauty salons and a few local customers. Estée began watching him work, asking questions, testing the creams on her own skin. She noticed something. Women who used the creams came back for more. They told their friends. They believed the products worked. And belief, Estée realized, was more powerful than the product itself. By her early 20s, Estée had learned to mix the creams herself. She understood the formulas. More importantly, she understood women. She would later say that her first business lesson came from realizing that women didn't want to buy cosmetics. They wanted to be told they were beautiful. So Estée began visiting beauty salons across Queens and Manhattan, offering free demonstrations. She would approach women in the waiting area, compliment them, touch their faces gently, apply a cream or two, and then whisper conspiratorially that she could see the improvement already. The women, flattered and convinced, would buy. Salon owners, seeing sales, would agree to stock her products. It was slow, exhausting work. But it worked. In 1930, at age 22, Estée married Joseph Lauder, later simplified to Lauder, a garment industry businessman. The marriage was difficult from the start and all. Joseph was practical, cautious, uninterested in his wife's beauty obsession. Estée was ambitious, relentless, and driven by a vision Joseph didn't share. They divorced in 1939, but something happened during their separation. Estée realized she couldn't build her business alone. She needed Joseph's business discipline, his financial stability, his patience. They remarried in 1942. This time, Joseph became her partner. He managed the finances and operations, while Estée focused on sales and branding. It was a division of labor that would define the company for decades. Together, they had 2 sons, Leonard and Ronald, both of whom would later play critical roles in the empire's expansion. In 1946, Estée and Joseph formally launched Estée Lauder Cosmetics with 4 products: a skin cream, a cleansing oil, an all-purpose lotion, and a face powder. They operated out of a small New York office. Estée continued her hands-on approach, visiting salons, demonstrating products, building relationships one customer at a time. But she had a larger ambition. She wanted her products in the major department stores. In post-war America, department stores were temples of aspiration. To have your brand on those counters was to be legitimate, prestigious, elite. But the stores said no. Revlon, Helena Rubinstein, Elizabeth Arden dominated the cosmetics counters. The buyers saw no room for another brand, especially one run by a woman with no advertising budget and no formal business experience. Estée refused to accept rejection. In 1948, she approached the cosmetics buyer at 6th Avenue repeatedly, each time with a new pitch, a new angle, a new reason why her products were different. Finally, the buyer agreed to a test. Estée could set up a temporary counter during a one-week promotion. If the product sold, Saks would consider a permanent placement. Estée saw her chance. She worked the counter herself, personally approaching every woman who passed. She offered free makeovers, gave away generous samples, and created the illusion that her products were already exclusive and in demand. The week was a success. Saks gave her a permanent counter. That single placement changed everything. Within months, other stores followed. Bergdorf Goodman, Neiman Marcus, Bonwit Teller. By 1950, Estée Lauder was a recognized name in American luxury cosmetics. But success hit a problem. The major players, Revlon and Arden, had massive advertising budgets. They bought full-page ads in Vogue and Harper's Bazaar, hired celebrities, and launched expensive campaigns. Estée couldn't compete, so she invented different strategies. Instead of advertising, she gave products away. She created the concept of the gift with purchase. Buy a lipstick, get a small sample of face cream free. Buy a foundation, receive a miniature perfume. The samples were generous enough to create loyalty, but small enough to be affordable. Women loved them. More importantly, they worked. A woman who tried a free sample often came back to buy the full-size product. Estée had turned sampling into a marketing weapon. It was cheaper than advertising and far more effective. Competitors eventually copied the strategy, but Estée had pioneered it. By 1953, Estée Lauder products were in stores across the United States, generating over $1 million in annual sales. The next breakthrough came in 1953 with the launch of Youth Dew, a bath oil that doubled as a perfume. At the time, perfume was expensive, often bought by men as gifts for women. Most women couldn't afford high-end French perfumes. Youth Dew changed that. Priced affordably and marketed as a daily luxury, it allowed women to buy fragrance for themselves. The product was a phenomenon. Within a year, Youth Dew was outselling every other Estée Lauder product. Women didn't just buy one bottle, they bought multiple. It became a signature scent, a status symbol, a daily ritual. By the late 1950s, Youth Dew alone was generating millions in revenue. Estée had cracked a fundamental truth about the beauty business. Women would spend on products that made them feel special, even if they couldn't afford haute couture. Throughout the 1960s, Estée expanded aggressively. She launched Aramis in 1964, the first prestige men's fragrance and grooming line sold in department stores. Men's grooming had been an afterthought in the cosmetics industry. Aramis proved there was a massive, untapped market. Then in 1968, she launched Clinique, a dermatologist-developed skincare line marketed as allergy-tested and fragrance-free. Clinique was revolutionary. It was clinical, scientific, moderns. It appealed to a younger generation of women who wanted efficacy over glamour. Within 5 years, Clinique became one of the top-selling skincare brands in America. Estée had demonstrated something her competitors hadn't fully grasped. The beauty market wasn't monolithic. Different women wanted different things. By creating distinct brands under one corporate umbrella, she could capture multiple segments without cannibalizing sales. But behind the growth, tensions were building. Estée was a micromanager, obsessed with every detail, unable to delegate. She would walk into stores unannounced, inspect the counters, criticize the salespeople, rearrange the displays herself. She demanded perfection, not just in the products but in their presentation, the lighting, the uniforms of the sales staff, even the tone of voice they used with customers. Employees found her difficult, exacting, impossible to please. Her sons, Leonard and Ronald, now deeply involved in the business, began to clash with her overt strategies. Leonard, who had taken on increasing responsibility, believed the company needed professional management, modern marketing, a more structured approach. Estée resisted. This was her company, built on her instincts, her vision. She didn't trust systems or consultants. The business, she believed, succeeded because of her personal touch. By the 1970s, Estée Lauder Companies was generating over $200 million in annual revenue. The brand had expanded internationally, with counters in London, Paris, and Tokyo. But the beauty industry was changing. Mass-market brands like Revlon and CoverGirl were growing rapidly, offering lower prices and wider distribution. At the same time, new luxury competitors were emerging, backed by European conglomerates with deep pockets and wealth. Estée Lauder was caught in the middle, too expensive to compete with mass brands, too small to compete with the giants. Leonard Lauder, now officially leading the company, made a critical decision. Instead of trying to compete directly, Estée Lauder would acquire and develop new brands, each targeting a specific demographic. The strategy was risky. It required significant capital and a willingness to let each brand maintain its own identity. But Leonard believed it was the only way to survive. The strategy worked. In 1990, Estée Lauder acquired MAC Cosmetics, a cult brand popular with makeup artists and younger consumers. MAC was edgy, bold, diverse, the opposite of Estée Lauder's traditional image. But that was the point. MAC attracted customers who would never buy Estée Lauder. In 1994, the company acquired the prestige fragrance licenses for brands like Tommy Hilfiger and Donna Karan. In 1995, it took full ownership of Clinique and launched Origins, a natural skincare brand. By 2000, Estée Lauder Companies controlled over 15 brands, generating nearly $5 billion in annual revenue. Leonard had transformed his mother's company into a modern beauty conglomerate. Estée Lauder herself remained involved well into her 80s, though her role had shifted from operator to icon. She attended product launches, met with retailers, and maintained her public image as the embodiment of beauty and elegance. But privately, she struggled with the company's evolution. She had built Estée Lauder on personal relationships, hands-on selling, and instinct. The new Estée Lauder Companies was data-driven, diversified, and managed by professionals she barely knew. She would later say that she felt like a guest in the company she had created. It was a painful realization, but one she accepted. The business had outgrown her, and perhaps that was the ultimate measure of her success. Estée Lauder died on April 24, 2004, at the age of 97. By then, Estée Lauder Companies was one of the largest beauty conglomerates in the world, with over 25 brands in operations in more than 150 countries. Her personal fortune, largely tied to the company's stock, was estimated at over $4 billion. She had been awarded the French Légion d'honneur, honored by presidents, and profiled in countless magazines as one of the greatest entrepreneurs of the 20th century. Yet in her later years, she often reflected that the business had been about more than money or fame. It had been about proving something. Proving that a girl from Queens, with no formal education and no family wealth, could build an empire. Proving that beauty was not a frivolous pursuit but a legitimate business. Proving that women could lead, innovate, and dominate industries traditionally controlled by men. Today, Estée Lauder Companies continues to thrive under the leadership of Estée's grandson, William Lauder. The company's market capitalization has reached as high as $150 billion. Its brands, from Estée Lauder and Clinique to MAC and Tom Ford, are sold in virtually every country on Earth. The original 4 products that Estée launched in 1946 have multiplied into thousands of SKUs across skincare, makeup, fragrance, and haircare. The gift-with-purchase strategy she pioneered is now standard practice across the beauty industry. The concept of brand diversification, allowing one company to control multiple distinct identities, has been copied by every major cosmetics conglomerate. But perhaps Estée Lauder's greatest legacy isn't the products or the profits. It's the democratization of luxury beauty. Before Estée, prestige cosmetics were marketed as exclusive, unattainable, reserved for the wealthy elite. Estée believed, and built her business on the belief, that every woman deserved to feel beautiful. That luxury wasn't about price. It was about aspiration. That a working-class woman in Queens had as much right to quality skincare as a socialite on Fifth Avenue. It was a radical idea in the 1940s. It's the foundation of the modern beauty industry today. Estée Lauder once said, "I never dreamed about success. I worked for it." It's a line that sounds simple, almost cliché, but it captures the essence of her story. She didn't inherit wealth or connections. She didn't attend business school or raise venture capital. She built an empire by visiting salons, touching faces, giving away samples, and refusing to take no for an answer. She succeeded because she understood something deeper than formulas or marketing. She understood that beauty, for most women, wasn't vanity. It was dignity. It was confidence. It was the small daily ritual that made life feel a little more manageable, a little more hopeful. And she built a $150 billion empire on that understanding.